Good morning, everybody. This is February 23rd. This is the Cluster API provider nested office hours. Talk about how the progress that we're doing on building out the Cluster API implementation for nesting control planes in Kubernetes clusters. We have we have an empty agenda, so we might be able to end this unless somebody has things they want to bring up and talk about. I don't have anything that I've added, so.
Yeah, I'm just curious. So it's I think Charles at CD that controller is reviewed and checked in, right?
Yeah, I think there's a couple changes on there. I think there was feedback that I checked in on this morning, and it looks like there's still some unchanged or finished work.
Let me try to bring in.
But yeah, we were chatting a little bit last week about the common spec channel changes. I think the big changes that are still in there were we still had some of the PKI generation in that controller. We can merge that, I guess, and we can just pull it out in the next PR that changes that moves that over to the NCP if we want to go forward.
Repeat that common spec stuff. So I didn't.
Yeah, so if you go check out the Cluster API nested Slack channel and then just scroll up, I mean, a couple messages from Thursday, we were talking about whether we wanted to move forward with the current setup or go fully into the KubeBuilder declarative patterns and use the version and channel fields that are defined in the common spec. That makes sense? I can drop a link to what I'm talking about.
I thought we probably will use the version, right? The channel part is pretty flexible in my opinion. So it's kind of, you can use that to point to any URL you want.
Yeah, I think the question here was, do we want to basically go down the path of using all of the built-in reconcilers from the KubeBuilder declarative pattern? So if you haven't looked at that, the inner workings of how that project is set up, it basically it writes the reconcile function for you, so you don't even have to implement it. You just supply it with that common spec, and it goes and looks up what manifest it's supposed to grab. So in the current etcd PR, we have everything hard coded as Go types to create the stateful set and and all of the components. Well, sorry, it decodes from a YAML file all in that controller. And so if we went the full KubeBuilder declarative patterns route, it'll automatically create a lot of those resources for you based on what's supplied in the channels URL in essence, or channels pointer.
I suppose that the URL will point to a YAML file.
Yeah. So that points to a YAML file or well, it's all YAML, but it can be customized driven or just raw Kubernetes manifests. So I think the plan was to move forward with this, and then we can make change. We can iterative, or we could change the implementation as we go forward with the rest of the controllers. Yeah. But I want to make sure. Yeah, I can ping Chow, or if you want to ping Chow, we can check in on those last changes and see if that's been done. The other one actually that it is good to call out. If you can if you have a chance, or if anybody has a chance, can you just go through that other PR on the NCP doc and and the nested controller and nested control plane doc?
It is kind of, I give some comments before, but I think you address it, and it looks okay to me. I think I can just add a comment and say, look to me. I want somebody else other than me. Sounds good. I think
cool.
You can just merge it. Yeah, maybe let's just take this chance to, how about just go through all the open issues and to see if they have the proper. Because we still need to track some progress on the open issues, especially on the development side.
For sure. Yeah, I think we were kind of waiting on the NCP doc so that we could start the nested API server. Here, I can share my screen and just show this.
Yeah, my point is something maybe can be done in parallel. So
definitely.
that doesn't have to wait on the NCP. For example, the
Totally.
NCP part, you can just assuming. I mean, the interface part, you can just assume something will happen and do the rest of the thing.
Yeah. No, that makes, yeah, I mean, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay, well, that's also a good call out. So Wei, Judong, Vince, Kaushik, if any of you have a chance and can go and give this a read through, the nested control plane and nested cluster proposal, that'd be fantastic. Just get some extra feedback in there. And if it's good, just give it a thumbs up.
Yeah, I already go through that. I don't see something we have discussed. I don't see anything wrong. I will give a thumb up there for that.
Comments to make sure I mean, people more than other than me have reviewed it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll write something. Okay, sure.
Thanks.
I'll check later in the day.
Thanks. Okay, cool. And then, yeah, so we still have a whip tag on this thing, on the nested etcd controller. Cool. Moving over. So the cap-end goals and the high-level cap-end goals and the high-level user stories, those are basically taken care of by the NCP and NC doc that I have for the proposal. So those will get closed out, and that's technically also what the one above it is, which is the base architecture. Those are just to gather people's requirements in separate spaces for user stories and the goals. So that those bottom three, 4, 5, and 6 should get taken care of by that PR. There's an open issue about updating the design resources. So Vince, you had mentioned that we had some fancy stuff within within CAPI to basically generate some of those. I moved over and used that to generate the diagrams for the NC and NCP doc. So at least the make files in there now. So that can get done at any time. I don't think it's a pressing issue. That's just version controlling those.
One thing, Chris. So if your NCP design is merged, so basically we have made agreement that the PKI stuff will be done in the central NCP controller. So not individual components taking care of their own PKI. So the Charles component design doc needs to be changed, because that doc says that each component needs to maintain its own. So I think you better create a new issue to update the.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's so confusing.
Definitely. New PKI plan. What was that PR number? It's 29. Yeah, I think there's another call out that you had commented in here, just to call this out. Oops. So you had added in that we basically, should we update this since it still mentions the CA being created by each component? Yeah. So here. Design for NKS and etcd and KCM. Cool. All right, going back to that. So it sounds like we basically can, yeah. So we've got 18 that's going and updating the design, the actual diagrams to use plant UML. Then we have the base scaffolding, which I believe that might have, no, that didn't actually get done because we don't have all of them in there. That's right.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Then we have create a controller. So that's what Chow's been working on. I started this work and then it skipped off to go do the NCP work. So now we have so once we get the NCP work, we can get we can actually start that in parallel and we can basically create the controller for that. So I'm going to actually make another that is create the controller for the nested cluster and nested control plane controllers. Yeah. I'll make 2 separate issues.
I think you need to create an issue, and yeah, we better design them so that people can know exactly what they are going to work. For example,
Sure.
Paul was asking me, so can he help more if there are left some issues open, unassigned? I said, we need to talk with Chris to see if
Yeah, I think pretty much anything in here that can be picked up as long as it's been documented in the design docs would be what I would say. So what we don't have, I think there's 3 issues in here that we need to make, because we need to make one for the controller manager, we need to make one for the control plane, and we need to make one for the cluster controller.
Yeah.
So those are all separate independent components.
Yeah, I think Chow can pick up one of them. I mean, I think Chow, if you guys pick up the API server, he can pick up the controller manager. It's pretty similar.
Yeah. I'm just going to link out to this one, and then I'll fill out the information on these so I don't have to type it on here. But I'll do that all outside of this call, not to waste all your time. Okay, and then we have one other one, which is the nested controller manager. Create.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
then this one to Chow, so he knows.
awesome.
How about others? So let's make sure the open issues has designers.
Sounds good. Real quick, just going back up to the top, because we have, or to the middle, the admiralty. Yeah. This thing, the feedback that we were getting from KFox. I think you had responded.
I need to refresh my mind. So let me see what's the best problem.
Yeah, so the idea, so KFox has brought up if we could bring this into CapN, to basically use that multi-cluster controller at all, or leverage any of the bits that they've done for scheduling, for multi-cluster scheduling, similar to what you're implementing in the. I'm going to assign this to you, and then I'll let you handle this, because you're doing something similar already in VC. So
just some more caution, like we usually tend to ask either to integrate, so like the other way around, non-CNCF projects and not use them.
okay, that's a good call.
Because there's a term of ownership that like it has to be owned by CNCF to make sure that like we don't make decisions for users that like they wouldn't want. So I don't know if virtual kubelet is in CNCF. Probably not. But
it is a CNCF project.
But it is.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you want to? How should we handle this then, or what would your suggestion be, Vince?
Yeah, I'm really interested about the virtual kubelet, so I will take a look as well, and if I need help, Faye will drive that, and I will take a look at these items.
Okay. Okay.
Like it's in sandbox still, so like we'll definitely wait for incubating first usually, and yeah, I mean like if that's useful for you all, like I guess you could start like looking at it.
So I'm still gonna assign it to. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna assign it to you, Faye. If you want to handle it, if you want to just triage that, it sounds like we probably are just gonna push this off then, and just be like, we're working on other things for right now, and as we get to virtual, or as we get to vkubelet into incubating, we can evaluate how it fits into this world.
Well, yeah, my intuition, once you say virtual Kubernetes, we did it.
What you say? I thought.
Once we are talking about a virtual Kubernetes, we will beat it. We will win because I mean we get virtual Kubernetes in all specs.
But the virtual Kubernetes already had the broad support from different clusters, so we should leverage on this community efforts instead of creating totally new one, correct?
No, what I'm saying that for the situation, any situation that the virtual Kubernetes was trying to tackling, in our VC model, we should support it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, true, yeah.
Because it just should register itself as a kubelet.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't be anything special for us. It should just be them integrating in like Vince was saying. Cool. All right. So the other ones we have nested API server. I'm just going to assign this to myself since I was working on it. Let's see. We've got update the nested component.
This one,
yeah, I can do.
You can do it if you want. I mean, it's pretty simple.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just waiting for that to get merged before I go and make some changes and then have to recycle through that. Cool. So then we have got the cluster and the controller, the nested cluster and the nested control plane types. And we have the controller manager. Socket closed. All right, does anybody want to pick up control plane or cluster types and controllers? If you've got cycles, if you don't, that's fine.
I can take a look first and let you know after that.
Okay. All right.
Which one?
Yeah,
can you create cloud controller and nest controller? Okay, I will take a look first, see how much work and how can I involve more on that.
Cool. I'll add more into the issue after this meeting, just so you don't have to see me type. Okay. And then if you're comfortable with it, then we can assign it to you. It's mostly just following the design doc that I wrote. That's that's here.
Okay.
Cool. Do we have more issues that we want to get filed in here? I know I've been doing. I know Faye, you've been doing a bunch of stuff in the VC land still, and I'm doing a couple more things, and I think Wei is also doing a couple things in there. So we've let this sit for a hot second. I'm not sure if there's other issues that we should file as of right now, or if we can just move forward with these.
Yeah, I think we can move forward. So I mean, this is pretty straightforward. In the end, I would. So yeah, if we really want to set something, maybe we can set a milestone. Or when should we expect we have a working demo of all together?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. And I'm not sure if I'm not sure what we should be working back towards or from.
No, I'm not saying that Intel VC the milestone. I'm saying that this NCP.
Right. Yeah, you're trying to figure out when we can set a milestone for when we should have something that we can actually play with and demo here from the CapN land. Yeah.
And then I mean, I suggest we discuss this and make some milestone. I mean, it's just planning.
Sure.
Because otherwise, it is kind of hard to track the progress and.
That makes sense.
We need to also, we need to also think of how to move the VC stuff to this repo, right? So everything that cannot be done in parallel. I think we have to do it in sequential because it's about the repo organization. How do we,
agreed.
So that, for example, because we may have two different CRD even groups mixed together. I mean, maybe somehow in the later it has to be temporary. That has to be done until we have some concrete NCP implementation ready already.
For sure. No, that makes sense. Real quick, Vince, from the CAPI side of things and managing milestones and all of that, is there any common practices that I should be following or we should be following? Things like the actual milestone that you're tracking against. Can it be something like just V001 or should it be like just MVP, or is there any patterns that we should be following or is it loose?
The MVP, we did 0-1-0, just because if it's V1 alpha 1, that's what I would target. And then usually we create 2 milestones, one for the 0 release and one for the X release. So everything in 0 release is release blocking, and the .x release is like going to be in a patch version later, but it cannot be breaking changes.
Gotcha. So it gives us a chance to basically have these aren't in scope right now. We can work on this and we can still have something that we're tracking against and something that we're tracking against next, in essence.
And then we have a next milestone, which is kind of like a catch-all for everything that's like not like now and like it need a proposal or something like that. And then every like cycle we kind of like reconciliate like all of the issues open to see like if we want to put everything in a new release.
Okay, so we're gonna have a next one as well.
Mm-hmm.
So 3, okay. I didn't set any dates, as you can probably already tell, on these. So do we want to work back towards, or we want to work towards some specific milestone? Is there anything that you're trying to hit time-wise, Faye? Or yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have very concrete, but I mean, common practice as soon as possible.
Sure. No, of course. I mean, we're looking at, so we're like February 23rd. Do we want to try and get these controllers done and an MVP in place by the end of March, end of Q1 of this year? Do we think that's reasonable?
That's reasonable, at least to me.
Okay.
NCP work end of March. I can make it a little aggressively make VC stuff. I mean, make this repo runnable for VC end of April, something like that.
So we would get these controllers done by the end of March, and then end of April we'd set like the next milestone, which is integrating VC into it. That's what you're saying. Okay, I like that.
Is that a 1.0 for end of April though?
I wouldn't consider it a 1.0. I think we would still be that would just be integrating. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Faye, but I would assume that would just be integrating what we have in VC so that you can leverage these nested control planes with VC, but still not be a full like a full 1.0 release. I think we'd still need some cycles on that.
For 1.0, so what's the criteria for 1.0? So, I mean, I actually have never hit any project that I was working on to reaching 1.0. Many places just 0. I mean, 1, 2, 3 is kind of I don't know. I have some other criteria on other projects 1.0, but I don't know for capping. What does 1.0 mean? It has to be.
When I say 1.0, it's like a 0, the 1. That's what I meant. Apologies.
Oh, gotcha.
Gotcha. I thought it's 1.0.
Yeah, I don't look at the V0 because everything has V0 these days for now. But yeah, like so the 0.1.0 release usually like it's expected to be something that works. Like it would be the first release. And if you need multiple steps during like the next couple of months, like you could also release like beta tags, so pre-release versions in GitHub release bingo.
I think yeah, there are a couple of things, right? So since this repo is about campaign, so if you look at the theme, it has to be as long as campaign works. I mean, you reach a milestone. This repo doesn't necessarily, because of the naming issues. I mean, although it has combined with VC, but this repo, I don't think is 100% represent VC. Although we may represent this repo as VC. So I can see that, for VC, if we bring VC stuff in, you can just name it 0.1.234. That's okay. It has to be 0.2. It's my opinion. So if you think, once we bring VC stuff, you make it as 0.2, that's also fine. But I'm assuming every bumping of the major release number like 0.2 means you have some innovation on the KPN stuff. This is my understanding.
Yeah, I would agree. Since adding VC into this isn't really changing any of the
Yeah,
CapN functionality, then we can probably just do it as a .1, and we can always, I mean, although I guess what you're getting at, Vince, is that if we do a .1 release, what do we like? I guess what depends there is how we define what is a runnable state. If you can deploy a control plane within a cluster, even if it doesn't work using all the VC bits, that still is a 1.0 release of the CapN controllers being able to deploy, and then we drop the VC stuff on top of that. So yeah, I think that makes sense, and we could just do like a 1.1 release that adds the extra functionality. And if we decide at that point that we want to pivot over to do a .2 release, then we could do that instead. Cool.
Yeah, so yeah, that's my understanding because of the naming. So the .2 has to be something new for the KPN architecture, either architecture or functionality. But all the augment additional stuff, even for the VC stuff, we can add this small minor version number to track the progress.
To give some background, like for the other infrastructure providers, like we did a release once, you could create a Kubernetes cluster. So that's kind of like the baseline.
Yeah, that's perfect then. That would be what fits into our 1.0. It's just you won't be able to schedule any pods from it in the nested cluster just yet, but that'll come quick. That should, yeah, cool. All right. So I'm not going to set a milestone. Well, actually, so I'll set this 1.x release as that April. Actually, no, I'm going to leave that timeline blank for right now, and we can just put stuff into this. I'll add this as integrating VC with CapN, and then so we won't set a timeline because we'll kind of wait until we get that 1.0 in place, and then we'll move. We'll set a timeline once we have that fully closed out.
Yeah, but I think we should have set a timeline for 1.0 somehow, right?
Yeah, I've got it due March 31st. Cool. So that gives us a little over a month to get a couple more controllers written and get this thing ironed out.
Yeah, I mean, setting a goal is much better because it gives people some pressure.
Absolutely. I mean, if you never, there's the one of those programmer, not virtues, but rules that are basically like it's going to be a never-ending work if we don't have an actual timeline or a release that we're working towards. So, all right. Do we have any other housekeeping items that we want to do? We want to handle while we're here. I guess we can go through and throw some of these into those milestones. So we basically have I believe that works, right? Did I do that wrong, Vince? Potentially milestone.
You need to install the milestone plugin in test.
Oh, darn. Okay, cool. Well, we can do that separate. Well, here, I'll add an issue.
Okay, that's okay. I think every issue is on milestone.
Yeah. Cool. All right, so then everything is basically representing that for right now, and then we'll get we can get the milestone plugin added, and then we can actually use those commands. Mm-hmm. Cool. That sounds good. I like this. So we have an actual plan to move forward on, a little more concrete. Anybody have anything else that they want to bring up? Agenda still, yeah. Otherwise, we can get back 30-ish minutes.
You want to discuss the thinker stuff, if you want? Or...
Sure. Do you want like the open PRs?
I mean the PR that you are working on, right?
Yeah, we can talk a little bit more about that. Yeah, your most recent feedback was basically the flow that I'm missing. So yeah, there's let me give you a background on what I think you fully understand what I'm going to be implementing. But in essence, I have another pull request that I haven't finished, which is adding in a webhook that basically just handles creates and creates go through and following this same exact flow. Just goes and adds the adoptable annotation when it creates the resource and expects that when the syncer picks it up, I mean, I don't have to walk through the code, but when the syncer picks it up, that it goes and checks to see if that annotation exists. Now the flow that you're talking about that isn't covered, we create the service, we change the service spec, vService spec, then vService is created.
What I'm saying that your webhook, when you create the service, I mean, you have time difference.
Yep.
So and if the controller kick in, the P service is going to be deleted. So that's my whole concept.
So I believe maybe I didn't actually.
Oh, you said the VC syncer will delete the P service
Yeah.
because of some kind of race condition, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In your current code, unless you change the code.
So this actually stops that from happening. So I check to see if it's an adoptable service. So we go through here. Let me actually open up this full file. So I did add that after you added that feedback. There is still a workflow in here that is bad in my opinion, which is there's two parts that are potentially conflicting. So once we get the list of services from the patroller, we go through and we check to see if it should be deleted. And if it's not an adoptable service, we add the should delete. But if it's an adoptable service, we don't add that. Now the one place where that breaks down is if the admission lifecycle in the tenant control plane, say the tenant went and added in something that validated to see, I don't know, that they set a key and it failed that check, but it succeeded the admissions or the mutating. We would have created the service in the supercluster. Admissions at the tenant control plane will fail, meaning we still have the orphaned service in the supercluster, but it looks like it's adoptable. And so it just sits there. That's a case that I definitely haven't handled yet. And I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to handle properly.
Yeah. So there are quite some, if you think about this more, so the corner cases there are some corner cases eventually, right? So and I think you still need to either change the code or whatever. But again, so if somebody delete the P service, so what we are going to in current code, I think we are create another P service which is completely wrong. So
right.
It's okay. I mean, but you have to stop this behavior. I'm okay. You come up with saying, just don't create it, leave it as it, and let people to figure out how to resolve it. I mean, or if P service is deleted, you need to delete the V service because you need to notify the tenant. Both are fine, but you cannot leave the current implementation, which is
yeah.
just create another P service, which is apparently wrong.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wonder if there's the area there that I'm still trying to navigate on how I would implement is if I go back and I delete the V service, what downstream could that affect if a controller was looking for those? Because basically in essence what could happen in their tenant control plane that they wouldn't expect if that were to be the case? And I've been trying to figure out if there's a way that we could do it otherwise, where if the P service is created or is deleted in the supercluster, we still have some allocation of that, but I don't think that's possible. Specifically the cluster IP, because that's the only thing that we're trying to deal with there is like making sure that the cluster IP stays the same. And it's almost like if it was already, it would just get reallocated to something else, or it could potentially get reallocated because what I was thinking there is if there was a flow where if it's an adoptable service and the P service is gone, we go and actually try and recreate with the cluster IP that was originally assigned to it, but that could have been reallocated.
that's impossible. You have to do the reverse order. So if the P service is gone, which means that class IP is gone. You should make
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah, because there's no pool.
so I mean, people can argue that this may not happen in practice, but I let you know. So the bad things will eventually happen. Trust me.
Sure. No, I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. Like just an accidental delete on a service in the supercluster would just tank that cluster from actually operating properly. So maybe what should be done then is we should. So are you thinking that I could implement in the a deletion check within the supercluster, check to see if that virtual cluster exists or the virtual cluster service exists?
You mean adding webhooks?
I mean, I could, but that's just more work for the supercluster to then try to triage back and forth.
I mean, you can add a finalizer if you want.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So we could basically have if it's been created by the tenant control plane through this adopting phase.
I mean, you should write something else, not incorporate this in the sinker, but you can have some other more new controller just handle off this kind of P service.
Sure.
Make sure that one take care of when to remove the finalizer.
Okay, that's an interesting idea. Now that seems like that would actually solve that problem, because then we in essence wouldn't be able to delete that from the supercluster. The only thing that we wouldn't be handling is like if the entire super control plane went out and was unrecoverable from etcd.
Sure.
And at that point we're recreating the state of the cluster no matter what, so it doesn't matter, I guess.
So you just need to think about, if you add a finalizer, it's kind of safe for you. Just think about how to, do the GC, garbage collection.
Sure.
Once the entire VC is gone, you need to remove this can be done separately in another controller. Just watch the VCCR kind of thing.
The only problem there is if that doesn't catch if they actually delete it in the VC. So there's the phase there where I kind of do have to handle that in the sinker. Potentially I can still put this under the same feature flag then, because if you delete, like if I wait on a controller to check to see, I guess I can have an outside controller that's listening for the services in the tenant control plane as well. Because like if you deleted it from the tenant control plane and it had a finalizer and I didn't remove the finalizer because I still had the VC around, it would still the supercluster service wouldn't get deleted.
Another problem that I was mentioning in the PR, which is I think let me think about it. So it is possible that people delete the V service and create a V service with the same name immediately. So the webhook need to clear the old one.
Yeah, what I had yeah, that's a good point. I had originally basically set it up to just find or create in essence. So it'd go and if it found one that was already existing, it could leverage that and just take it over and readopt it. But there's probably some issues there from a security standpoint, where if you adopted a service that was associated with other, well, no, it would just get re-reconciled at the end of the day.
Chris, do you think it's possible that you get rid of current VC Syncer service part and create a total new one with your webhook combined with the supercluster service creation? Because the mix with the current VC Syncer service synchronization will always have kind of a loop. Either you create that one, the VC Syncer will recreate or re-delete, this kind of thing. So why not just get rid of the current VC Syncer service synchronization method totally? Then everything goes through your supercluster plus webhook for the service. This will be very clean for you and for all the service. Faye, do you think that's possible?
That solves some for the problem, but that doesn't solve the problem I was mentioning. So
yeah, we still have to handle a lot of cases there. We have to re-implement a lot of what VC's already done to do that.
I mean, you still have the problem, right? If P services is deleted, although Thinker won't create a new one. So what's your reaction in your case? I mean, even you have an individual thinker.
Yeah, then you delete the virtual cluster service, and because the P is deleted, then you have to delete the V. So then the user has to recreate a new one through the webhook, because as of today, every piece deleted, the virtual have to follow.
What if it's not a user-driven action? So what if somebody?
There's no choice. If you have a root privilege and can control the supercluster, user has to bear with that. This is by design. You cannot compete with admin in the supercluster. Correct. You cannot never fight the admin in the supercluster. And if supercluster has the privilege to delete anything, the virtual has to follow. You cannot force it or not force it. This is our philosophy day one, correct?
But in kernel model, I mean, the source of truth is V. It's kind of P cannot delete it.
Yeah, by design, you cannot, but someone in the privilege mode, if they want clean up the supercluster, we have to bear with this, this consequence.
Thinker will recreate everything because Thinker is also running as a root.
Okay.
Thinker is also root. So you are saying the problem is two roots are competing each other. It's not, root competing with tenant, because Thinker itself is a root. It has full privilege to operate the supercluster. So if you delete, so basically like we are in the same privilege. You delete my things, I need to create again.
Okay, so this is the kind of a.
This is different. It's not saying that. I mean, we create a hole for the tenant to use the virtual resource, the super resource. No, not that way. It's like a proxy. The Thinker is proxy everybody, and now impersonate everybody as a root. And because it's a very strict way, because we carefully control everything in the Thinker to make sure there's no abuse.
Yeah. So your flow, your suggestion that you had, where basically pretty much everything that's implemented here stays. The main addition that we would add is in the checks on a deletion at a supercluster, we go and delete in essence, delete and recreate the service against the virtual cluster's control plane from what the object was currently in there. Just basically remove the cluster IP and let it reallocate itself, because then it just goes through the admission lifecycle again. So Syncer gets a request, request comes in to the tenant control plane for a new service. It goes and creates in the supercluster. Life goes on. Somebody goes into the supercluster or something happens in the supercluster and that service gets deleted. The Syncer notices the deletion on the supercluster side of things, grabs the object from the tenant control plane, the V service, deletes the V service, and then recreates it with that same exact object without a cluster IP assigned to it and without resource versions and all of the metadata in essence. It would go through the admissions lifecycle and create in the P service again. It's just a weird hop there. But it would go and reallocate a new cluster IP and it would be routable at that point.
I mean, it's not a very.
It's a little bit weird, but yeah.
Implementation, but functionality-wise, maybe okay. But
all right.
Yeah, this is why I was a little bit have another option with Chris that I use NAT to NAT the virtual cluster service using the supercluster IP. So I just do a NAT on the pod side so that we can translate locally to the virtual cluster service to the real IP, which is allocated by the supercluster.
That's fine. I mean, if you can change anything in the Kubernetes proxy side, you have tons of ways to resolve this problem.
No, not Kubes. I was using a sidecar like East.io, but just do a
as long as you manipulate the host network stack in whatever ways you want, sidecar, Kubernetes proxy, then this problem is gone.
Yeah.
So you guys using this approach, right, in your internal?
And Kubernetes proxy.
You use Kubernetes proxy, okay.
Yeah, you guys have some special sauce there that makes this a little bit easier to work with than I think what we're working with.
you can manipulate network stack, so it's pretty easy. But I mean, I'm assuming solution like don't change that part and make it work.
In essence, yeah. Part of
Yeah,
part of that is one of the reasons why.
Yeah, the crew proxy stuff has a little limitation because not every user use a crew proxy. Some user is IO, some user use a different network stack for the Kubernetes. So just changing crew proxy is only one solution. So we would like to have a more generic approach.
Sidecar is also,
on the
Sidecar looks better than crew proxy in my opinion. Yes, or yeah, even you need a container if you really want to do that. But I don't have a strong opinion. If you have a good prototyping, that's nice. I don't have strong objection for that. But people will always have that opinion of having another sidecar containers.
Yeah, this is what we did. Yeah, a little bit, but
that sidecar has to. I mean, sidecar may be reasonable, better. Yeah, but
because this one only change the kernel of the local pod.
Sidecar probably won't work. I mean, you probably have to put in a init container.
Yeah, there are some init container, I think. Yeah.
You have timing issue. We do hit that. So you have to make sure the rules inject before the real container starts.
Yeah, this is still, yeah, we still have a little bit timing issue, I think. There's no guarantee because there is a using the synchronization to monitor the service creation, all these things, and it cannot be real time.
So that's a reason you probably have to put in init container. So init container need to do something. You need to wait until until the rule is up, is correctly. But it's a bit tricky because Chris, we did that because we leverage Kata container. So then you can do that. So if you want to do that, which means you have a root privilege, your pod, your container can change the host network's IP table. So
yeah,
it may not be true. I mean, in multi-tenant environments, this doesn't sound right.
But I kind of don't need a fully privilege. I don't need a 3 kind of a privilege level because you need to change the kernel, the net table, so that you have to have a 3 limited privilege, but you cannot do it with a normal user privilege to do that for sure.
It depends, but I can see some limitations there because I think people are even talk about to get rid of the pod, entire privilege about operating network stacks. If you join the multi-tenancy, working group, they were talking about the reducing the capability, the system, the pod default capability. I think to get rid of a lot of capability of operating on the networking stack. If you open it, that's okay, but I mean, it's very specific it's scenario specific. So I agree, Chris' intention to try to resolve it in a kind of don't change that part. That part may introduce.
Yeah, I also agree on that. So this is why we just explore a little bit other directions, not to go further. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think you can try. I mean, if you don't have that limitation on changing the host network IP table, you can try with the init container. So you can.
Yeah, I already did that. It works, but we don't want to go that direction because we need a privilege change, and also Chris seems a more kind of a clean version. So.
Yeah, I think I think for the first version, just make sure everything works and kind of resolve these kernel cases. Just try to simplify as much as possible. At least people can give you a try to see what's going on. This is a hard problem. I mean, we can point out a shortcut, but with some additional condition to resolve this problem. But if you don't have that shortcut, I mean,
for sure,
that can work.
Yeah, there's some weird corner cases here for sure to resolve. Yeah, I agree. I super appreciate your help, like navigating these things and calling them out. That because I had missed that virtual cluster one, and I'm surprised that it hasn't bit us yet, at least in my testing. That it's mostly just like that timing issue. Okay, so I'll get the other change in here and feature flag it as well, just like everything else that's in here. so that it doesn't affect anything that you're doing. And then, cool, that makes sense. How's the scheduler stuff going? Just out of curiosity to check in, and we only have 7 minutes left.
Yeah. I think we can have a working demo this week, actually.
Awesome.
So is this a code in the experimental, in the multi-tenancy code? Oh, this is the part. Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of, I put a lot of efforts on, most 90% of my work was, maintaining the cache. The scheduling part is pretty simple, but at least you can, for the simple use, very common use, it can cover 80% of use case, in my opinion. Just create a namespace, give a quota, and the quota will be spread to multiple super cluster, and the sinker, each super cluster will have a sinker, just sync the particular paths, have the right, class name in the annotation.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's fantastic. Yeah, if you have a working demo, I would love to check that out next week, or if you're willing to present on that. I think that'd be super cool.
Yeah, also interesting to see it. Yeah.
Working demo in the sense that I think there are only probably is 1 or 2 changes left, so I assume we have a working demo this week. Next week definitely we should have a working demo, but I prepared 0 document, so I like to have some document first. Based on,
I really want to see some of your explanation about the code and how what's your basic ideas.
Yeah. So the most challenging part, I think nobody addresses in multi-cluster world is the scheduling part. This scheduler, compared with Kubernetes scheduler, this scheduler algorithm-wise is much simpler, but it is much difficult on maintaining the cache.
Sure.
You mean the cache of each cluster?
Scheduler cache. I need to cache the cluster state. I need to cache the namespace state. I need to cache the.
Okay.
Because think about it, Kubernetes scheduler need to only watch one API server. I need to watch M+N API servers. Any one of them can be done, and I need to make sure my scheduler is not broken due to any of the clusters done. So algorithm part is very simple. The tough part is the cache part.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited to see that. Whenever you're ready, just make sure you add it to the agenda so we can actually have it scheduled out.
It may not even take multiple slots. One slot may not be enough because there are a lot of stuff.
Okay.
But anyway, so yeah, I have some progress on that. Hope I can share it and give me some feedback.
Very cool. Awesome. All right, folks. Anybody have anything left they want to bring up in the last 4 minutes? All right. Sounds good. Well, we will see you all next week, and have a great rest of the week.
Bye.
See ya.